I asked a few of my friends, like, hey, do you ever struggle with this? And the answers were astounding because I found out within a small group of my friends, some of them also actually tried. And I never knew, I've known these people for years and I didn't know this about them. I didn't know they were struggling. There'd be times where the same day we were together, we both didn't open up to each other and we didn't know.
Hey there, my name is Sean, and this is Suicide Noted. On this podcast, I talk with suicide attempt survivors so that we can hear their stories. Every year around the world, millions of people try to take their own lives. We almost never talk about it. We certainly don't talk about it enough. When we do talk about it, many of us, including me, are not very good at it. So one of my goals with this podcast is to have more conversations, and hopefully better conversations, with attempt survivors. A huge thanks to everyone, all the survivors who have joined me here on the podcast since we launched now more than 2 years ago in July of 2020, and of course to everybody who listens. Thanks. If you are a suicide attempt survivor and you'd like to talk, please reach out. hello@suicidenoted.com, on Facebook or Twitter @suicidenoted, and you can also leave us a recorded message. Check out the show notes on how to do that. And you will also find in the show notes a couple of more links. They are to help us out with a financial contribution as we try to share these stories of survival with more people in more places to hopefully help them feel a little less shitty and a little less alone. And finally, there are links to upcoming events. If that's something of interest to you, we'd love to see you at one of our events in the near future. Now, we are talking about suicide on this podcast. Take that into account before or as you listen. It may not be for everybody, but I do hope you listen because there is so much to learn. Today, I am talking with Francisco. Francisco lives in Malawi, and he is a suicide attempt survivor. Hey, Francisco, and you're in Malawi right now.
Yeah, right now.
Malawi is a country in sub-Saharan Africa, and I have not had a lot of people who reached out to me from sub-Saharan Africa, so I'm excited about this.
Yeah, I was like, hey, I don't know if I'm the first African, but at least sub-Saharan is good for me.
You might be. I think you're the first sub-Saharan, yeah. Other than South Africa. Do you live in the capital of Malawi?
No. Funny enough, I was living in the capital of Malawi until February when I moved back here to Blantyre. So I was originally from Blantyre, so I moved to the capital, worked there for about 3 years, and then now I moved back here. I got a new job in Blantyre.
What kind of work do you do?
I'm a graphic designer.
Now, this is a podcast. I want to give people a visual. Francisco is sitting there. He's got his headphones on. He's drinking out of a mug. He's got a sweatshirt on. He's in a room, probably his bedroom, I'm guessing.
Yes, this is my bedroom.
He's got it in his bedroom. He's in town in Malawi, which, if you haven't figured out yet, is in sub-Saharan Africa. If you don't know what that means, please Google sub-Saharan Africa. How in the world does Francisco in Malawi find this podcast by Sean in North Carolina, United States?
Funny enough, that question is very interesting because I've never been one who sticks to podcasts. Like I can start listening to one, but I was never consistent with it because I'd either get bored or something like that. But I have been listening to yours every single day or week ever since I started, and it has been amazing. One night I was struggling. That night I was struggling the most. Funny enough, so today is the 1 month anniversary of knowing Suicide Noted.
And you found it a month ago when you were having an especially difficult period of time.
Yeah, it was an especially difficult night. And I remember it was a Sunday, the 26th June. I was just struggling that day. And I think I was crying and I was, basically just fighting your thoughts in that moment. Because I was ready to do it, in that night. I was ready to do it. And, basically just grasping at straws. And then I was like, you know what? Let me go online because I usually use YouTube when there's these TED Talks, listen to them and just lived experiences, right? This is stuff that I've watched and listened to over and over. I was like, this is not going to work. And so I went on Spotify, right? And I just put in, I think I typed in suicide survival or something like that. And, obviously a couple of podcasts popped up.
Sure.
But like the bigger question, I think you would be like, why this particular one? I don't know. It's just, I saw the title and then I read a little bit of like the description and I was like, this is very interesting. Let me
Okay.
let me give
All
it
right.
a listen. And
Mhm.
I wish I had like marked which specific episode that I listened to, because it
Hmm.
changed my life. You know, like there's power in lived experience, and listening
Yeah.
to other survivors. There's so much power in that, because I was able to pull out, because like for a moment there, now all you're doing is just listening to this person's story, and your thoughts are sort of like quieted down, and now you're just focusing and you're listening. And the interesting part about almost each and every episode that I listen to is the similarities. you know there's
Mm.
so many similarities, and you're like, I also go through that. In
Mm.
maybe not so, the pattern isn't the same, but it's literally the same thing, the same type of mind chatter and everything. And it's just crazy, but also it's like calming, sort of knowing that, oh, there's not necessarily community, but there's people that also go through this, and they found a way to survive. So maybe there's also a chance for me to go on. Yeah.
Wow. I'm really glad you found it. And I appreciate you sharing that. When you said, and I'm paraphrasing, I was ready to do it, just to be clear, we're talking about ending your life.
Yes.
Did you have a specific way you wanted to do it?
You know, I've researched and tried to find the easiest way to go,
Mm-hmm.
and it's not easy. I've researched this. I'm trying to look at a way that I won't feel pain,
Of
but also
course.
something that is accessible to me. Another thing that you should know is, in Malawi, suicide is technically illegal.
If you try and you don't die, you've now broken the law. Consequences of that, if they find out, which they may or may not,
Mm-hmm.
is now you've got to deal with all of that. And in Malawi, do you have any idea if you get convicted, what is the penalty?
You do get arrested, I think, for some years. I'm not sure the exact number of years.
Prison?
Yeah, prison. Yeah.
If you try to end your life, and I'm going to do my very best throughout to not be judgmental towards a culture or a country or a government or a system, but I am naturally affected by my own upbringing and being a white dude from America. How can I not be? A little bit? Just to be clear here, and you could push back. Most people who try to end their lives are just in a lot of pain.
Yeah.
I have not met a person, and they might be out there, who has attempted to end their life and they said, I was not in any pain. I've never heard that. It's probably a thing. I've never heard it.
Yeah.
Probably for most, after a whole lot of back and forth, not sure, figuring it out, trying, and you get punished by going to prison.
Yeah.
That's hard for me not to feel angry about, or at least affected by.
Exactly. So there was an incident, must be 2-3 weeks ago, where a man he climbed on top of the electricity pole tower, and he was trying to jump off. People were trying to talk him out of it, and then the police later came in and tried to talk him out of it, to come down. So the news was covering it, like pictures and whatnot on social media. And so in the comments, most of the comments were even people saying, just let him go, because if he comes down, all you're going to do is arrest him. And he knows that. So the chances of him actually coming down are like slimming with every second that the police get involved and more people and stuff.
I want to know what happened.
I think he came down actually, because they said, I think the fire department was involved as well, because it was a high place, and so they had to come. And
he didn't jump. Somebody got him down.
No, he didn't jump. Yeah.
And now he's probably in jail.
So I think now the laws, because I was looking into it as well, the laws are trying to change the laws a little bit, because mental health issues are now being paid attention to now, especially this year, because we've also had, since 2020, COVID hit us all really hard. The mental health issues rose, and suicide rates rose like crazy.
So I'm still thinking about a month ago, since that night, when you came pretty close and you stumbled upon this podcast, and that and other things presumably helped you get through the night, and you're obviously still here.
Yeah.
How many times have you thought about taking your life since 1 month ago?
Every day.
Every day. Every moment of every day?
Yeah. I have struggled with it ever since I was 8 years old. And, back then also not really understanding what it is, but just basically struggling with it. I told my mom, and back then as well, we were struggling. My dad passed away when I was 3 years old. And so I grew up with my mom. And so we were really struggling. I was, I was being a little kid, but I'm doing some simple math. And I was I'm looking at my mom struggling to maybe raise up my brother's school fees, or even just put food on the table, right? And so here I am talking to my mom, and I'm like, hey, if I died, you could probably like, take -1, everything sort of balances out and everything. I like told her about it. And obviously she talked me out of it. And, all these years since then, she didn't know that I was still struggling with it. She had no idea. And so I've just been, how there's a stigma around it and everything. Yeah, like you don't talk about it, especially with the whole conviction part as well, like you don't really talk about it. So all this time I have struggled about it, basically ideating, but I had never really attempted. So this year it has been the most intense because it moved from something that maybe I get like a very serious episode, maybe once every 2 months, to once every month, to once every week, to once every day, to once every hour. You wake up every day and it's like, how do I not die today? That's the best way I can put it. It's like, how do I not die today?
I mean, this is a weird thing I'm going to say, but that's a really good way to put it.
Yeah.
Like, how do I not die, whatever it might be, today or this hour or whatever it is for anybody?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
One of the questions I'm going to ask you is how you didn't die, because I always want to understand, particularly given what you shared. You don't talk much about it. People don't talk much about it. You don't have some of the resources that other people have in North America. Not always. There are communities here that don't have much, but you don't have much.
Yeah.
So you're just kind of mostly toughing it out on your own. How in that time, from 8 years old on, how did you cope?
So the funny thing is, since this year has been the most intense one for me, so I don't drink, nor do drugs. I drink occasionally if there is a specific event or something. If we're celebrating something, I will drink, but I don't drink as a coping mechanism.
Mm-hmm.
But at a certain point in time, I did smoke marijuana at some point as a coping mechanism. I think must have been like 16 or 18 at that point.
Is marijuana illegal in Malawi?
Yeah, it is.
Do you have any risk of someone hearing this and being in trouble, even though it's in the past?
No.
Okay.
So people casually smoke it here like it's not illegal. Before that, I was basically just toughing it out, basically just distracting my mind. As a kid, I think it's slightly easier to distract your mind. But, one of those, like when you go back home, sit down in the middle of the night, you're alone, you're there, you're thinking about it. It comes there. Those years were still slightly better than the adult years, which are now like you're conscious of everything.
Well, when you're young, you just had fewer years of suffering. It starts to add up, and all of a sudden you've been struggling for 10 years, 15 years. How old are you now?
I am 25, turning 26 in October.
Right. So it's been 16, 17 plus years.
Yep.
And you said it was progressively more intense. It went from once in a while to more than once a day.
Yeah. This is sometimes where it's like, where you're talking to your mind, you're like, can I just have 1 hour or 30 minutes where I'm just not having this battle here? Must be 2020, I started seeing a therapist. With my first therapist, I never opened up to them about my suicidal ideation. I think I was going through some work stress issues, stuff like that. Yeah, so they were only dealing with that. So, but I was still hiding because, again, like there's so much stigma around it. I was still, hiding it. This is something that I go through. And this is a person that can help me. But here I am still hiding it like, hey, this is my problem. I will deal with it by myself. So the same thing, how my family didn't know anything about it until this year. So I told them this year, actually, when I moved back. Yeah. So all these years, they didn't know.
You grew up. Did you go to college?
Yes, I did my diploma in graphic design.
So all that time, nobody really knows.
Nobody really knows.
When you say nobody knows, do you mean nobody knows you've thought about ending your life or any sort of pain or problem?
Probably like some very close friends would know that, oh, maybe I struggle with depression or anxiety, but still they would think it's a minimal. Like if it was on a scale of 1 to 10, I'd say they know a 4 and there's still a 6 there that they don't know.
Did you move back to live near or with your family?
So I moved back to live near my family, but then I ended up living with my brother, which I think has been a big help, actually.
Mom, brother, you said you opened up to some of them.
Yeah. So I opened up to my mom first and then my brother. and then maybe should be now maybe 4 or 5 of my friends, just those people that I know that can actually understand, but also I can call when I'm like in the middle of something, because people still take it here as, it's crazy, right? But it's like, if I call you and say, hey, yeah, I'm going through this really depressive episode and stuff like that, they're just going to say, oh, don't be sad. Right. Stuff like that. It's like, no, it's not something I can just be like, oh, okay, I'm not sad anymore. Thank you for telling me. I did not know that, But it's like,
you're like, you have no idea how many conversations, both like actual and internal, I have around this stuff. I hadn't thought about it. Thanks for letting me know. Just don't be sad. Thank you. Great. Good night. Bye-bye. What?
Like, let me write that down. Let me keep it.
But isn't it? I'm probably uber ultra sensitive, but and this isn't a knock on your family or friends at all, but isn't it a little insulting or at least condescending? A little bit?
It is. Because even for me, like when I think 2020 is when I realized, sort of like getting into grasps, like how, like actually putting one of those, like putting a face to a name type of thing, right? For my condition. I realized with my employer, I was having imposter syndrome, so that's when I started looking it up. And then I think I wasn't actually looking up. I was on YouTube as usual, TED Talks. Then I stumbled upon someone who was talking about imposter syndrome.
Sure.
And that's when I was like, wait, that's something that I actually go through, and sort of like went into this rabbit hole and just deep dive, and then actually being like, oh, this is the term for this and everything. And just having like your eyes opened and just like, I'm not alone type of feeling as well. Yeah.
Did you and your therapist, who I assume, because the way you had framed it, you eventually started sharing more with your therapist?
When I moved back here, my therapist is still in Lilongwe, in the capital city. So she's actually she was an older lady. She was a nun, actually. She was a nun, I think from Canada, if I'm not wrong. Yeah.
Was it a white woman?
I had a white woman.
You had a white woman nun as your fucking therapist? God damn, man.
I know. But here's the kicker. She being older, like old, she wasn't older, she was pretty old. So she would sometimes forget where we're at.
Shit.
So I kind of have to backtrack, which wasn't too bad, but it makes it easy for me to omit certain details that I had said previously. Those, it's like I can now edit my story.
When someone tells me that their therapist or their counselor is also practicing whatever.
Yeah.
Christian, Catholic, Muslim, for some reason, I'm like, because I don't know if this is true, but for me, it feels like sometimes those can be kind of I don't know if the word's dangerous things to overlap, because at the end of the day, aren't they always going to go to God?
Yes, that is a very good point.
Right.
That is very good. But luckily, she didn't. Even being a nun, she didn't, which was strange even for me, right?
She might be a great therapist, but she's not a very good nun.
Yeah. Because so now where that crossover comes for me is my family and basically my mom. So I was born Catholic. I transitioned sort of like finding for myself what I want when it comes to church and whatnot. So I'm still sort of like in the middle of that, but my family doesn't like that at all.
Right.
Catholics are very, traditional. You find that when I'm having conversations with her about this, the way she will express it is more or less like, it's kind of like a demon. And I'm like, no, when you pull the demon card, you pull the prayer card. And when you pull the prayer card, it takes away from the fact that this is a very real situation for me that I go through, that I fight with, So it's almost like if you pull the demon card and I pull the pray card, it's like, yeah, so now the demon is like, okay, I'm not going to bother. But it's like, no, I have been going through episodes and I have been praying and it has not worked, It's still a very real, almost physical fight.
It becomes this weird circular thing, because even if you say, well, I've been praying, someone could say, well, pray harder, pray more, believe more, have more faith.
Yes,
Did this therapist nun have a diagnosis that you agree with?
She never really gave me like a specific one. I think we just sort of dove into it. So she never really said, oh, you have this, So she sort of just dived into like trying to help me. But then when I moved here to Blantyre, I started seeing another therapist, Malawian, a lady as well. She more or less gave me a diagnosis, which is severe depression and anxiety.
Do you agree?
I do. I do agree. Half the time here, you have to have the smile on. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Because even if somebody asks, like, you look down today, I can't even begin to explain because, first of all, you wouldn't understand.
Right.
Like, you really wouldn't understand.
Did your therapist who diagnosed you, what did she suggest in terms of specific treatment or coping? Was that meds? Was that go for a walk every day? Was that pray? What was it?
Here, we're not actually big on medication. If, let's say, I think, which is more recent that I've been thinking about, if I open up about my suicidal ideation and depression, and even now I'm thinking maybe people with ADHD or severe ADHD or something like that. What now I'm thinking back into like how I was raised and what I've been seeing. So there's be some people with, generally, like, let's say people with mental health problems, right? What would happen is they'd be taken to mental institutions. These places are not like the ones in the US. It's not like some nice place where you sit around, you talk about your feelings and stuff. This is heavy medication, probably sedation and whatnot. And I guess you have a one-on-one with a psychiatrist or something and whatnot. So it's not necessarily an ideal place to you can't call them and be like, oh, I'm feeling this way. And they hold you for a night and they see how you're doing. So medication is off the table. There is not much there. Yeah. And prayer, she's not religious, or at least she hasn't brought up the religious side to me. So she's more of a psychotherapy. So where she sort of like directed me towards, yes, taking those walks and sort of like trying to find myself, trying to learn to love myself and, discover myself and sort of like rediscover the world again, learn to love the world again in a way, see the world in a new light and something like that. But that has to start with me. I have to, within, like the work within. It's been most of that. And, these things also need consistency. And sometimes it doesn't always go that way. But with the work that I have here now, I have less time to myself. And that is really sad for me because I love going on walks. I love going on hikes. So, yeah, that's the route that she went in. And it has been helping in a way. Yeah. But of course, she doesn't know that I attempted.
Why not?
We haven't had a session in a while. Yeah, I don't know how I'm going to tell her.
Your work now is as a graphic designer?
Yes, I do go to the office every day.
Nobody there knows that you tried to end your life?
I have one friend I told, and even for them to know that I struggle with suicidal ideation, I'm always in these headsets. I always have a hoodie on. And I'm always like either on YouTube or on Spotify listening to something. And then she asked me like, what are you listening to? What are you always listening to? Right. And then I just showed her like, oh, this is what I'm listening to. And then she saw that. And it was one about suicide. And it must have been about the Golden Gate Bridge guy, actually. So she was like, is that the topic that interests you? In that moment, I was just like, I was like, okay, I'm just going to be honest. It was like, it's something that I struggle with. And then she was like, oh, interesting. And then we had a conversation about it, only to find out that her husband also struggles with the same thing, which was crazy. Like the coincidence.
Not that crazy. Nobody talks about it.
Right? That's another thing. Yeah, I think that you have a point. So after my attempt, so it was a Sunday, right? And next day I went to work and she noticed like something was a bit off. And then during like my tea break, she was like, hey, what's up? Can we talk? And then, yeah, it's always hard. Like, how am I going to say this? Because also she checks up on me. She's a very sweet person. She checks up on me and whatnot. And the person that you're checking up on, you want them to get better. You want them to be better. And so it's kind of heartbreaking to tell them that I am not doing as great as you think, but that's okay as well. So yeah, I told her and she didn't freak out or nothing. She totally understood.
And her husband deals with some of the stuff.
So he used to. Yeah, he attempted a couple of times apparently.
Before I ask you about the attempt, one other question. You had said working with your therapists, sort of psychotherapy.
Yeah.
You mentioned that you'd first started feeling something at 8 years old. Do you think there's a biological component to it that's completely outside of how you were raised and environment, just You just got unlucky. Some might see that
Yes.
as unlucky.
I have been racking my brain with the same question for months now, trying
Yeah.
to figure out if there is a genetic like link, because sometimes from the stories that I've also like listened to and watched on YouTube or something, you find that maybe an uncle in the same family or a grandpa or someone actually attempted. It's not always, but it's sort of, there's some of them that have those traces,
Mm.
and it makes you wonder, because like sometimes you don't know how far back your like history of your family, you don't know it that well. And again, because it's so well hidden, nobody know, like they wouldn't tell you that, oh, one of your great grandparents.
It also makes me think the power of technology. It wasn't that long ago that you're not watching YouTube videos.
It
You're not
didn't
finding
exist.
anything in a podcast. They don't
Mm,
exist.
mm. And you find that because I guess of the stigma that has been there from a long time ago, it wasn't even in the books, because back then it was books, right? But it still wasn't in the
Yeah.
books. Like I'm always astounded by technology like that.
So when we started talking, you had said a month ago it got really bad. And then since then, and maybe before then too, you're thinking about it a lot.
Mm.
How long ago was that
Yeah,
Sunday that you tried?
a month ago today.
That
Yeah.
Sunday, did you try to end your life after or before you found this podcast?
Before. This was before. I was alone that night. I was alone. My brother was away. But that night we had a blackout. You know, it's Africa. We have blackouts, everything, like
Sure.
every other week, every other day or something. My phone had died. My
Mm.
laptop had died. My power bank had ran out of power. And I was just there. And then with the blackout, I have books. I can't read a book because there's no lights. I have no light source. I was just there and just wallowing in it, just ruminating basically. You know, like because it's like a mind chatter, right? It's almost like the whistling kettle. It's whistling, and half the time because you have other things to keep that noise away, you know. But now it's like the kettle full blast. That's all you hear, and it's just there. And it got to a point where I was like, you know what? I have struggled with this for such a long time. I am tired. Like I am genuinely tired of like waking up and just, you know, like one of those, like when you wake up, you're like, oh, why am I up? When I sleep, it's kind of better because I don't think about that. And so it's like I was crying, and I was crying. And you know, the funny thing that I realized is in those moments when you are struggling because something in you wants to live. That's the struggle. That's why there is a struggle. That's why it sort of hurts in that moment, because it's like every other bone is saying do it, but there is something there that's saying don't. And so my tears were because I'm like, I just want the pain to stop. You know, I just want this pain to stop. And so I'm there, I'm just crying. And then I'm like, I was basically like, you know what? I've been a coward all my life. Maybe today, let me just man up and do it. It's like, you know, I'm tired of just basically struggling with this every day. I looked around my room. Not many things that you can actually use, you know?
Right.
Yeah, and I think I failed to continue before as well. Like I'm not the cutting type as well. Like I never, because I'm looking at the most painless way to go, right? And I'm like, cutting, it's gonna hurt when I cut myself, and I also don't want to leave a mess.
Because are you
But
thinking at all like, well, my brother's going to find me?
these are things that I think about ever so often, you know, because I'm like, I can't do it while he's here,
Right.
but I also don't want him to find me.
Right.
You know, it's crazy. It's like a very, very crazy riff. I really don't want him to find me, but he'll have to. But I've also looked at so many stories to the point where I look at people who've lost loved ones to suicide, and like it never goes away for them.
But that to me tells me that's how much pain that person was in.
Exactly.
They knew it would be that painful, and they love these people, and they still did it.
People. Exactly. So I looked around my room, and when I was moving, I packed like a little rope. There was like a rope. For me, you know, like obviously when you think about suicide, this rope, the first public vision that comes to your head is rope, because that's what we've seen all this time. For the life of me, I never learned how to tie knots. Like, you know, the hangman's noose, I never learned how to tie that, which is good, I think. Yeah, so I use the door. There's a way where you sort of like pin it against the door. You have like
the door that I can see right now behind you.
Yeah.
Somehow made the rope. Doesn't matter the details, but you tried to hang yourself on that door that I'm seeing behind you.
Right there.
What happened?
Yeah. So I found a way to like put it around me and keep it there. It was like tightening, you know, it's tightening. And the one thing I realized as well is I think, well, I mean, it's crazy, but I realized that the struggling is because of the snap right here. But what happened with me was it was cutting off, I think, my blood flow. So I was sort of passing out slowly. And I don't know how, but it got loose and I sort of like slumped down. While I was down there, I'm like slowly like fading back into it, slowly fading back into it. And then I'm still crying, right? Because even all the while when I was doing that, it's not like I stopped crying. I was still crying because again, the fight is still there. Like, so when I got up from there, and it took a while, obviously, for me to like come back to it. I got up from there, sat down. So the lights had come back at this point now. And so now, like, I plugged in my phone. That's when I searched for the word suicide on Spotify.
We're talking a minutes?
Yeah. Because I knew if something didn't happen, I was going to go back. This was probably around 10, 11-ish.
Brother wasn't home?
No. He wasn't home. Yeah. So I knew that the night is still long. I don't know what time he's coming back. And crazy enough, he came back like way in the AMs. So the night was definitely going to be long if I didn't. So I knew that something is going to happen.
Francisco, am I the first voice you heard after attempting to take your life?
Yes, you were. Your song, I love that song because it fits so well, man.
The Suicide Noted and its accompanying music is spreading all over the globe. When you heard that and you listened, at some point you made a decision to actually reach out to me. Now this a week, 2 weeks, even 3 weeks, whatever it was, went by.
Yeah.
I heard some podcasts. In that time, you've told at least one person, your coworker.
Yeah.
Your brother ever find out?
No. So if I give him a link to this is how he will find out.
Well, one of the questions I will ask you is, who knows about the attempt and who knows that you're talking to me? I'm wondering, a lot of people hear it. A lot of people have attempted. Most don't reach out. So what do you think was behind that of saying, no, I'm going to actually call this guy or message this guy and see if I can chat with him?
So one of the things is how it has helped me. Like I wake up every day and I go there. I'm like, okay, which one haven't I listened to? And I play that. And there's so many of them there. I'm like, Yeah. So depending on how much time I have. So usually now what I do is on my way to work, I put in my headsets. I'm listening to it. I'm listening to someone's story. And it's just helped me because, like this fight is a daily fight, right? It's an hourly fight. So for that early morning, I need something that just, grounds me back. And so I was like, you know what, if their story helped me and I'm all the way here in Africa, how would my story help someone else?
And you know what? Shh, don't say anything because we're not supposed to talk about this, especially in Sub-Saharan. There's people, maybe in Malawi, I'm sure in parts of Africa, they put the word suicide into Spotify. They might hear this too, and they're going to hear you. And when it's you, and this might sound a little weird, but hearing a dude from Malawi is probably a little different for them than hearing a woman in Colorado. You've got more in common. And there's a whole bunch of people suffering over there, and very few people are talking. I know it's changing, but it's slow.
Yeah.
So you're in a sense like a pioneer, man. You've got more to lose than I do. I'm a safe white guy who comes from somewhat of a privileged background. I'm going to be fine. You've got a bit of a risk you're taking, so I really appreciate that. I presume you're going to be okay. But you were talking, it's criminalized there. The other question I was wondering about, a lot of people here do think about this. Look, if I try to take my life and I don't succeed, that's the best word I can think of in the moment.
Yeah.
Probably going to have to go to a hospital. And they're better here than there, but a lot of them aren't so great. Okay. Yeah. They end up getting a big bill and they don't help very much. Sometimes they help. You might face jail.
Exactly.
It makes me think that's to sort of measure your pain, knowing, I could be wrong here, that you care about your brother and your mom. It sounds like you do.
Yeah.
You might go to jail if they find out. Now, granted, it's pretty unlikely they're going to find out, but who the fuck knows?
Yeah.
Still try. It just tells me the dude's in pain.
Yeah. I agree with that totally. That's a consistent thing across like your episodes, even the pain. It's like, I just wanted the pain to stop.
Because you had said that one of the real struggle and one of the sources of your tears was wanting to live. Because I do think whether you believe in God or some sort of universal spirit or whatever else, we are designed to live. even though we are all dying at some point.
At some point.
There's a lot of forces, makes it really hard to end your life.
Yeah.
So naturally, I'm going on a little bit of a rant here.
Go on.
Everything is pushing back against you, even if you're down and even if you're out and you're in pain for years. For a lot of people, I think there's still a lot of push of like that, like you're saying, that conflict, wanting to die, wanting to live, but wanting the pain to go away. Not wanting to wake up, but knowing that your family is going to probably be waking up and you won't. All of that, man. It's got to, I mean, it's just, so when someone says, hey, yeah, just don't be sad.
Yeah.
Come on. You had said at some point you told your mom and your brother and a few friends. You got really real with them. This is before the suicide, I believe.
This is before.
How did they respond to that?
With my friends, I think this generation, we could call it Gen Z or millennial or whichever. So because I think we've been exposed to things like knowing that, depression is real, mental health problems are real. So there's a little bit of an understanding. So the stigma is being broken. We're breaking the stigma because they've also gone through some form of it, And so I asked a few of my friends, like this is how I also I asked a few of my friends, like, hey, like, do you ever struggle with this or something like that? And the answers were astounding because I found out within like a small group of my friends, some of them also actually tried. And I've known these people for years and I didn't know this about them. I didn't know they were struggling. There'd be times where the same day we were together, one of those, like this period of time, we were in the same city, we were meeting up often, literally, like we both didn't open up to each other and we didn't know, and then the other group would be like, oh, yeah, I might have thought about that when I was a teenager. And I was like, so that was it for you? Like when you were a teenager and that was it? And for me, it's like, it's been, constant. So there've been, again, you can't tell everyone. So you do have to look at who you tell. So who you trust and knowing that they will understand and stuff. On the family side, it's kind of crazy because it's easy for them to rush to guilt you into living. I don't know if that makes sense.
What do you mean, guilt you into living?
First of all, obviously, it's a sin. And then obviously my mom was like, I love you very much and stuff like that. But you killing yourself would be the fastest way to kill me. So it's kind of heavy as well. It's like, man, it's hard to process that. In a way, you kind of want to say it's not about you, but, but it's also like.
It just makes things more complicated, probably. And I'm not a parent, so maybe I would say that. I don't know. I don't have kids. Yeah. I don't know how I would respond. That's got to be very heavy for her. Yeah,
exactly. Because her generation, the stigma is what they grew up with. Us, it's better because we're exposed and we're open to learning about this and knowing and accepting. Their generation is very, very rigid, like with the way things are. And it stays that way. So I kind of understand where it was coming from.
But how they responded to that conversation, I am sure informed who you chose to share about your attempt.
Yeah.
I'm going to guess you didn't tell your mother.
No, I did not.
Why would you? You just shared with us how your mom responded when you told her what you're thinking about at whatever that was sometime before.
Yeah.
Who would then tell them? Of course not. I'm not saying what you should do.
Yeah.
Wondering, I just makes sense why you wouldn't.
Yep.
How many people in the world know, other than me and your friend at work, that you attempted to take your life 1 month ago?
So I think you might be the fourth one.
Anybody freak out?
No. So I think because they know, I've explained a bit of what it's like. So they've been really supportive as well, because most of them have been saying comments like, I'm glad you're still here, which sounds very like, small, just a word, but it's really heavy in a good way. It's like wow. Yeah, glad you're still here, man. Like, keep on fighting. Because, people want, like, I know they probably want to say a lot of things, but they also recognize that you've gone through this so many times in your head, like what they would say, So yeah, they're really some cool people, very considerate people as well. Yeah.
Are those two friends that you're referencing women or men? Or
so again, the crazy part here, I think, is men here have be a man. One of them is a guy, because women have a more, let me hear you out kind of thing, like, let me hear you out. And you explain. I'm gonna like, don't go through that. Like you should not be going through that. Just, stay strong and just power through it.
You had shared with your friends something they asked and you shared with them. And then some of them you found out have gone through something similar. I will say this to the audience. I don't usually get on my like high horse so often. Well, probably I do, but ask somebody something like that, or even something that's not quite perhaps as intense, and shut up and see what happens. Ask the question and do not talk and see what happens. Because I promise you, as long as you can handle what they have to say, you will be surprised. I know I sound like a condescending son of a bitch right now. You will be surprised. People want to talk about it, but they don't have the opportunity to talk about it. So ask your question and then shut up. See what happens.
But I think one thing that people don't understand with the stigma around it is, and I think that's how I was like, I think I was going to explain this later, but it falls, I think, into the myth category. People think if they ask or they try to talk about it, it will trigger an episode or something like that. But more often than not, no, because when you ask something like that, all that other person needs from you is just to listen. And one of the most, I guess, fulfilling exchanges that I've had with people, or the people that I've shared, the friends that I've shared, is when they're just listening. They're not saying, like, they're not trying to tell you to live. They're not trying to say all these things, but they're really just listening.
One of the things I've figured out is if you could tell people all you have to do is say nothing, people could probably do that. Here's the problem. Unless I'm talking to you, for example, and you have this whole thing laid out and you're venting, got a whole monologue about it. All I have to do is listen and say nothing. Sure. Yeah. Most of the time, here's the trick. I think the tricky thing for people is in a conversation, the other person, the listener, still has to say stuff to keep the conversation moving forward. And that's the problem because they don't know what to say there. And that's when they start. And some of them are just jackasses, period. But all right, well, there's a natural break here and I got to say something. So, and then they start saying the stuff. And there are other things, simple things that one could say that sort of just keeps the conversation moving forward without doing all the things that very few people, if anybody, appreciates.
Yeah, that's totally right.
If you're starting from a place of curiosity, that goes a long way.
That's true.
Now, do I understand why that wouldn't be the first thing? Your mom? Sure. She's freaking the fuck out. She doesn't want her son to die. I mean, I get why that would get in the way. I'm not naive to that.
Yeah.
Like people that need to hear that aren't listening to this podcast, probably, and aren't open to hearing it. So I don't know how to bridge that gap because they're like, whatever, dude, fuck yourself. Okay, bye-bye.
I loved one of the podcasts you had. I'm not sure how recent it is, but I was listening to it today. As you had talked about how there's not many platforms. There's so many podcasts for so many things, but not many for this.
There's not many, Francisco. As far as I know, there's one.
Exactly.
There's other formats, so I'm not suggesting I'm the only person talking about suicide, but I'm the only person, as far as I know, and I'm very proud of this, where all I do is talk to attempt survivors. That's the whole show. Nothing else to it.
Yep.
There's nothing. Why is that, do you think?
I don't know. It's crazy how if you actually had an honest survey and people were honest, you'd find that a big population actually goes through this, right? But the hiding is still there. Like it's the 21st century, but it's still there.
When you say you have episodes.
So basically ideating 24 hours a day, right? Or at least the time that I'm awake. So these episodes are more intense where it's more or less like an attack. Like my brain is basically attacking me and just going intensely focusing on that specific part where it's like, you know what? Let's just be done with it. Let's just be done with it. So these are more where, basically reduced to tears and I'm just shaking and just crying, those moments where I am fighting for my life with every second, and I pick up my phone, like, should I call someone? But you're also fighting it at the same time. It's like, no, let me fight it. I've always fought it. Let me continue doing it. Even the people that know that I go through this, but it's still hard sometimes to reach out to them. Crazy enough, I thought I wasn't going to admit this, but hey, man, what the hell? So we planned for this meeting last week, right? I wasn't sure if I'd make it to this podcast. So I was having another episode then as well.
So last week when you reached out, you were in an episode, which is an especially difficult rumination / whatever else is going on. When you, and I'm not diagnosing it at all because I don't know much. When you say like you're attacking yourself, you hearing voices?
Not necessarily voices, but just, thoughts. So you basically mind chatter, right?
Yeah.
I think at this point, the mind chatter is more precise. So I guess I'd imagine like words on a page, like a novel. So many tiny words, so many of them. But then at this particular point in time, there's some specific words in bold, you know what I mean? Like bigger and bolder, and it's like, yep, here you are. And now it's like, so at that point, music, like the things that usually help and stuff like that, they just sort of help for a bit. And sometimes it's I've been reading this book by, is it Eckhart Tolle, The Power of Now. So it's one of those where it's like you bring your mind consciousness, right? So doing stuff like breathing, stuff that you do involuntarily, it helps you like bring you back to the now, so stuff like that sort of helps. But the one thing that I love, this is like a favorite thing of mine, like the song that I've been playing on repeat has been Breaking the Habit by Linkin Park. For me, it sort of brings me back to consciousness because it's like, I really want to break this habit, Like if I am going to live, I don't want to live like this because this is tiring. It's heavy. If I'm going to live, I don't want to live like this. One of the lyrics that I just love, I wanted to share was, "You all assume that I'm safe in my room," because when someone's just there, it's like, yeah, no, but it's like, no, behind this closed door, there's like a whole bunch of stuff going on.
I'm looking at a door where you tried to end your life right now in your bedroom.
Exactly. And I just open it and close it every day as if nothing happened.
You had mentioned something earlier about, you had referenced a myth, and that's a question I often ask, but were there other ones that have not come up that you want to address, myths around any of this stuff?
I wouldn't say there's ones no, like you've pretty much probably covered it, I think. So I had to write them down because I was like, hey, maybe I do have a specific one that I got one. Yes. So one, obviously the golden star one, or the number one rule, it's not selfish. If you had to change the name of your podcast, it would have to be, it's not selfish.
But you know what I've thought about? I wonder if I had a podcast where I was just talking to suicide loss survivors.
Ooh,
that's a different answer.
Yeah. Oh, I've watched some YouTube videos and people have expressed it that way. Yes. Like parents literally expressing it like he was selfish to do that, and I've just been there like, damn. But I get the hurt as well, like.
But I'm talking to suicide attempt survivors. Naturally, they're not going to think it's selfish, and I happen to agree.
Yeah. And the other one is, I think people often label it as a phase. It's like, it's not a phase. It's not a season. I guess it is for some, but for some of us, it's real. It's an everyday real thing, which is another one, a big one, where people usually, when they're trying to talk you out of it or something, they say, this is a permanent solution to a temporary problem. That's what they say, right? It's not a permanent solution to a temporary problem. These are rarely temporary problems. It's like, for some of us, these are not, we know because we've struggled with it. Yeah. So we know this is not a temporary problem.
At what point is it not so temporary? A year, 10 years, 20 years?
True.
It's not temporary. It feels about as permanent as anything else in somebody's life. So, Francisco, I am having a hard time not viscerally disliking people who say shit like that. I wish I were nicer and be like, yeah, it's cool. You have your opinions, you have your reasons. But I just am like, I can't talk to you. I can. I guess if it was for the podcast and it came up, I'd fake it. It just pisses me off.
Yeah.
I like the way you said that, the way some letters were bold.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, the graphic designer's coming out here in his way of. All right. So you're 25. You're almost 26.
Yeah.
You attempted suicide 1 month ago.
Yeah.
You know the next question, right?
I do know the next question.
So when's your birthday?
The 9th of October.
Let's go with that one, because this has been an especially difficult month, it sounds like. Almost 3 months away. Your episode probably won't be out before then. You going to be able to hear this episode?
I was thinking about that this entire time. But the one thing that came to mind was, even if I don't, I'm still glad that my story is out there and it might help someone. Even if I don't, even if I'm not there.
Did you answer my question? I don't think so.
No. I have
You did
not.
a good job of deflecting. I love it.
Years of practice. So to sort of like put it into perspective, on that specific day, a month ago, one of the things, and also the episode that I had last week, one of the things that was bolder than the rest would be that heavy feeling of like, I'm going to do it, I think, at some point. And if I'm going to do it at some point, why not now? I feel like I'm going to go out my way, either way.
I thought an interesting choice of words when you said, I'm going to man up and do it. And I was like, that's an interesting, because you could make the argument, someone could make the argument that manning up would be a different choice.
Yeah.
You said you get up in the morning, you're like, fuck, why am I still here? I think you said that, right?
Yeah.
So for me, the fact that you get on with your day, whatever that looks like, that's also a form of manning up, you could say, right?
Yeah.
Because I'm pretty sure, despite your big smile, this shit ain't easy.
No.
Because we have established people don't try to end their lives who aren't in a lot of fucking pain.
Yeah. Last week after my recent episode, I texted my therapist. I didn't tell her that I attempted, but I was just basically just telling her, oh, I haven't been doing as great, because we've been like silent for a while. And I guess she would assume that I'm doing great, right? So I was like, hey, I've been silent, but keeping a ruse, like I've been okay, but I actually haven't. So I've just been like, going down this hill a little bit and tell her that there was no hill I jumped, but I was just like, I've been going down a hill and stuff. And one of the things she said was exactly what you said, which was like, just still being here for the fight is very brave. That's a strong character right there. That's the manning up that we're talking about, So you just reminded me of that when you said that.
Has your therapist ever asked you if you've tried to take your life?
This was before I had actually tried, yes.
Has she ever asked you that question?
Yeah, yes, she did.
She still doesn't know.
She still doesn't know, because at that point, when she had asked me that, I was in a very dark place. So I was in a relationship for a couple of years, and it ended this year. So that's why this year has been quite intense as well.
Yeah.
And that person for me was a very big pillar, because she knew what I would go through, but obviously not everything, right? But she knew, and she would help me with she'd help me through some episodes. Really, love is really strong. So with my therapist, we were talking about this, and I had told her that I think my ideation had gotten to a point where now it's slightly less, but as I walk in the street, going to work every morning, crossing the road, I'm basically looking, I'm like, that truck, quick way to go, something like that. It's just an accident. Nobody would, that way I'm taking the blame away from myself in terms of like my family would be like, oh no, he didn't actually do it. Maybe he was killed in this way and stuff like that, something like that.
So if I could make a deal with you and somehow have the power so that when you go to bed tonight, you don't wake up and everybody thinks that you died peacefully in your sleep, would you take me up on that deal? Tonight, not tomorrow night, tonight. And it's almost 11 now, right?
Yeah.
So you're going to bed in the next couple hours, probably?
Yeah.
If we could take out the possibility of pain, if we could take out the possibility of not completing the act, and if we could take out the judgment or stigma or whatever else people might feel because that's the way you died, we take all of that away. Do you say, yeah, I'm out?
Let's add one more thing to there.
Okay.
And this one thing would be take out any possibility of reincarnation and you've got a deal.
Oh, you don't want any chance that any part of your soul comes back as anything?
Nope. I just want to sleep. I just want to be at peace.
You're out. And every part of you for infinity is out.
Out.
Given what you just shared, do you believe in God?
I do.
Does your God have a name?
Yeah, just God. Yeah, that's the name.
Is your God the kind of God that would be forgiving of this kind of act? Or is your God the kind of God who would not be forgiving? Or perhaps I'm trying to simplify it and it's neither or both.
That's a very interesting question. I would like to believe that he is the kind that, so I'll put it this way. I was raised to believe he's the kind that is not forgiving of this, right?
Right, sure.
But I've grown up to, have my own beliefs and stuff like that. And I'd love to believe that he is rational also. So I'd love to say he would understand, but we don't know, right? But I also have questions for him because I just want to go there and be like, so You gave me this life that I did not ask for, and you made it miserable in some form or ways, and you expect me to continue with it in this miserable form or state and not come out this way. You know what I mean? To what end? Because I think one of the bigger questions that I've always had is existence. Why? To what end? You know, like, to what end do we exist? Why? Where is the end goal? Where is the purpose? Because we all know we're gonna die. It's almost like a cycle. Which is why I'm like, I hope there is no reincarnation, because I cannot do this again. Because and obviously, like you said as well, that if you do, like, let's say reincarnation, you might not know. What if there's a slim chance that you might have a little residue, something where you actually know, like, I have done this before, and it did not go well.
That works.
Yeah, but it's just tons of questions, basically.
Well, I will say this, that even though you will choose what you want to choose and do what you want to do, certainly from this person, without judgment, I will echo what your friend said to you and say that I am glad you are still here.
Thank you, man. It means much more than you think.
Mr. Francisco in Malawi, not the capital, do you think you'll actually listen to our conversation?
I strongly want to. I really, because I have enjoyed this so much. I'm not afraid to hear myself. So I'm pretty excited to like, hey, want to see. I do have a friend of mine who also goes through something similar, and I shared it with her. And she was going through an episode like of her own as well in that moment. And she was like, it helps a lot.
Wow.
Like she literally said it came right in the moment, because it was also like probably this late or something. And I was like, hey, there is this thing. Mind you, I was also going through an episode myself, but I was like, I know this person is also going through it. And I think I was listening to one of your episodes. And then that's when I was like, oh yeah, there's this person. And I think what was being explained in there was something similar to what she goes through. So I was like, this specific episode. And so I shared it with her, but I was like, you know what, listen to that if you can, and go through some of the others as well. And I think she's hooked as well.
You make a very good point, though. I ask sort of casually, just share it. Well, there's a reason people don't share it on social media. I get it. Mr. Francisco in Malawi, thank you again, and I shall talk to you soon, sir.
Thanks for having me, and I really, really enjoyed this. I love this conversation. Thank you, Sean.
Stay well. Bye. As always, thanks so much for listening and all of your support. Special thanks to Francisco in Malawi, Sub-Saharan Africa. Thank you, Francisco. If you are a suicide attempt survivor and you'd like to talk, please reach out. hello@suicidenoted.com, on Facebook or Twitter @suicidenoted. You could also follow a link in the show notes if you'd like to leave us a recorded message, or if you'd like to help us out with a financial contribution. We would appreciate that. However you support us, thank you. And that is all for episode number 131. Stay strong. Do the best you can. I'll talk to you soon.